we'd like to open our regular June 2022 regular monthly meeting, June 7th. Thank you all for coming. It's going to be a relatively short meeting because we did receive word that we would not be doing a hearing on the Seasons Corner Market and gas station proposal. So anybody who is here for that, there will be no discussion other than an extension of the time clock and the continuation of the public hearing, perhaps. So I would just like to let everybody know who is around this table. We have our newest member, Christopher Schreiber, who just come in. Christine Shea, you all know. Janice Gomes, you all know. Amanda Susan Vieira, who usually sits there, just called and she's tied up at work. You all know Rosemary Eva, I'm Sam Hardy, you know Todd Romano, our legal counsel, Adam Raposa, Peter Bramante, and Kelly Ravenel from Steer Engineering. And that's all we have tonight. We're short-staffed tonight. Yeah, so we do have a 5-member quorum, but I will call the roll call. So, Christopher Shea?
Here.
Christopher Schreiber, Christine Shea, Janice Gomes, Rosemary Eva, Stu Hardy is here, Adam, Peter.
Present.
So we do have a quorum. And so I would like to invite Patrick Coyle, who represents Seasons, or Colbia Enterprises LLC, I should say, to come on up. And
good evening, Patrick Coyne, here for the applicant Colbia Enterprises, and thank you everyone for your time. We are here tonight. Todd and I had discussed yesterday, we will be seeking a continuance of the public information hearing that was scheduled for Colbia's master plan review application until the July 12th meeting. The planning board will see so far.
Extending time clock?
Yes, as we discussed, the time clock will be extended in accordance with that. There's a 35-day gap between now and July 12th.
Fine. So we need a motion to accept the extension of the time clock. And what you're doing now by extending the time clock on the Article 20 Development Plan Review is you're making both time clocks consistent with one another in terms of the time frame, so that we will still have two applications. At this point, we still have two applications from Colbia, an Article 20 Development Plan Review and a Major Land Development Master Plan. So both of those applications will have an identical time clock. And that time clock will now be July 12th. Sarah Rosemary.
I'm sorry, it's procedurally, there are two separate items on the agenda, and I think we should go by the first item, the master plan public information meeting. And I will make that motion to continue to July 12th.
Right. So I will second that motion. So we're just simply extending the time clock to July 12th, which is our next monthly meeting.
I'm sorry. Ms. Eva, was your motion to continue the time clock or the hearing?
The time clock.
Okay.
And I seconded it. Is there discussion on that? Hearing no discussion. Christopher, you're for it. Christine. Janice is for it. Rosemary is for it. Stu is for it. Adam is for it. Peter is for it. So unanimous, 5 members present, all voting in favor. Now, since we're still on Major Land Development Master Plan Public Information, should we continue the public hearing? Do you need a motion to continue the public hearing?
Yes, please.
Okay.
So moved.
So Rosemary moves, I second.
It didn't time clock.
Okay. And what are we doing now?
The meeting.
Yeah, I'm meeting in a public hearing. So, is there any discussion on extending the meeting, continuing the meeting on Seasons to July 12 and having a public discussion at that time? Hearing no discussion. For the Seasons, and here again, because this time clock would end in June 11, which is only a few days from now. Are you also requesting an extension of the time clock to July 12?
Yes, and we discussed at the prior meeting that the development plan review application should move in accordance with the preliminary plan review application. So that can be adjusted going forward. We agree not to take up that until the preliminary plan review solution.
So are you saying, Patrick, that you would like us to have a single agenda item for Colbia when we have our meeting on July 12, and anything that goes beyond July 12, because right now it looks like you have two applications, one for development plan review and one for major land development at the master plan stage. Are you suggesting that we merge those into a single agenda item? Can we do that?
I think what he's suggesting, correct me if I'm wrong, is that you continue the DPR until the preliminary plan hearing.
Correct. That was the discussion at the previous meeting.
Okay. So I guess we need another motion now to extend the time clock for the development plan review, which is Article 20, to July 12, 2022, because it is now set at June 11.
Well, I think what Mr. Coyne is suggesting is that the DPR, time clock, and hearing both be continued or extended until the first preliminary plan hearing.
That was consistent with what I thought we had discussed in the prior meeting. Now, if we need to conference after this meeting and readdress it at the next July 12th meeting, that's also fine with us.
It's whatever you're most comfortable with. I think we could do it to preliminary plan hearing, but if you want to discuss it further with Mr. Stolzman, that's fine too.
Sure, if we could discuss it further with Mr. Stolzman, extend the clock until July 12th, for now, that would be best.
Okay.
And then you can get back to Todd and just let him know how you'd like it to appear on the agenda for our July 12th meeting.
I would say carry the two, I'm sorry, but Mr. Carry the two items on the next agenda.
For July 12th, we are.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So do we have a motion to accept the extension of the time clock for the development plan review to July 12, 2022?
So moved.
And I second that. Is there any discussion? So we'll start with Christopher.
Yes.
Christine. Janice. Rosemary.
Yes.
Yes. Stu, yes. Adam, yes. Peter, yes. Okay. And should we now do yet a fourth?
Yep.
So now I would entertain another motion to continue development plan review to our July 12, 2022 regular monthly meeting.
So moved.
I second. Is there any discussion?
Just a question, what does that agenda look like in terms of time?
That's a good question, Peter, because we really don't know what's come in lately into the office, what time clocks are ticking away in the office that I don't know anything about, and what we may have to put on that July agenda. But as you know, Peter, it was your idea, we're having a special meeting just to deal with Tiverton Heights in a couple of weeks, and so we won't need to deal with that. So we do have one ERS that we may have to take up on July 12. We hope to deal with one tonight, and then but there's a second one for the Stafford Pond watershed that we probably won't be able to deal with tonight. That's about all I know of. Friendship Farms has not yet come back that I know of, but but that's a good question, Peter. And we'll be looking at it very carefully.
What else we can
Very
bring out
carefully.
in terms of
Exactly. We don't want to miss any deadlines and have any approvals by default. So anyhow, we have.
Yes.
yes.
So we have a motion, a second, we've had discussion, any further discussion? We do need to take a vote. Christopher?
Yes.
Chris did? Oh, we
You did.
Oh, wait, I did.
Yes.
I did? Good. Okay.
Much better.
No. So thank you so much, Patrick.
Thanks everyone for your time.
We will see you in July then, I guess.
Looking forward to it.
So the next item on our agenda is something that has been circulating, I know, for a while, and unfortunately, the application for the ERS, which is an environmental review statement, which is required for any development of any significance in the Nonquit Pond primary watershed, and in the Stafford Pond watershed. And that's to protect the water quality and make sure that the impervious cover does not create a stormwater runoff situation that brings more pollution into those two ponds, which, as you know, are drinking water reservoirs, and they're both impaired. Their water quality is impaired according not just to our own local DEM, but to US EPA, which has established a TMDL program to help remediate that water. So we've got Bill Smith.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, would you mind reading the whole item into the record for those?
Yes.
who are here? And for the record, I'm going to recuse myself. I'm leaving the dais. and-
So what we're talking about here is agenda item number 3, which is Lawrence and Mary Cannon, who live at 3991 Main Road, Tiverton, and they are within the Nonquit Pond primary watershed, and they would like to do a 2-bedroom addition to their existing single-family dwelling and a new on-site water treatment, wastewater treatment system. And so that's what we're discussing. And the application came in quite a long time ago, but it took a while to get that application to the 2 reviewers who it has been our tradition to request a written analysis and a written opinion from both our town consulting engineer, Steer Engineering, and from our Conservation Commission chaired by Tom Ramatowski. Tom tells me he never did receive an application, and Kelly has now received an application, but it didn't come in very quickly. So unfortunately, us planning board members are going to get blamed for the delay, but it really wasn't our fault. But
A letter from the conservation.
oh, you do? Okay, that's news to me.
It was sent to the planning board and copied me on it.
And when did that, what was the date on
May
it?
30th. So I'd gone to the Conservation Commission, when I filed for planning board, as a matter of course, I sent Tom a copy, so that he would have it, he would get us on his agenda in advance of your meeting, also like the next one that's on your agenda.
Super.
So,
Well, that makes our job a lot easier.
Yeah.
then.
I think that's my only copy, but I can follow up and get another one with them.
So did everybody on the planning board get the narrative on the Cannon's application, the one on Nonput Pond? And did everybody get the plans that Bill Smith put together? I hope everybody did. Okay. You don't have the plan, but you do have the narrative. So with that, I think I'm going to, or you can even look at mine right now, Peter, if you'd like to, or I guess Bill here is getting one. So I'd like to call on Kelly. Kelly did a letter that I just saw a few days ago. You were kind enough to send it to me, otherwise I wouldn't have seen it. And you did note some inconsistencies. I thought the most serious thing about your comments were there were inconsistencies between the narrative and the plan itself. So would you like to explain that to the board?
Sure. So the biggest issue noted in my review letter relates to the calculations are on sheet 1 up at the top. And in terms of the calculations relating to the plan below it, as well as the plan and the calculations relating to the ERS, my original comment was that I was confused as to whether it was a dwelling increase in building coverage or a deck increase in building coverage, because if you look at the calculations, the existing dwelling is 2,093 square feet, and then the proposed dwelling is the same 2,093 square feet, because it still just says existing dwelling. So it says expanded deck and new addition, which is fine, but I think if you were to just do the math between the numbers, some of it doesn't add up, and there's.
I think that the percentages are slightly different there. I believe it's closer to 1.7 for the existing and 2.3 for the other. I didn't have my calculator with me, but I just tried to do some quick math. What is being proposed, I'm sorry.
No, but-
shows, but there is a proposed addition that's going to be infilled in here with a deck that's going to be around it. So we are proposing both addition to dwelling and a deck. And, that's the gist of what's driving the project.
So I think as long as the calculations match what's shown in the ERS, also because I think I saw, I wrote a total increase in building coverage of 791 is stated in, 791 square feet is stated in the ERS, and that's not reflected in the difference between the existing building coverage total area and the proposed building coverage total area. So it's more so just to indicate that there's an issue somewhere, but as long as you work them together, I think that would be resolved. Another comment I had is the ERS relates in the proposed conditions section. It states construct a rain garden for collection and treatment of stormwater, and I didn't see a rain garden.
Okay, I'm sorry, it's an infiltration trench that's being proposed. The water table is deep enough that we could actually put something below ground as opposed to a surface feature.
Okay. Forgive me, I'm just looking for my.
Mr. Smith, have you received
Sorry,
comments?
I do think it would be helpful just to reiterate that any call out you have on the calculations, for example, the proposed deck, I think has a call out for the addition, but not necessarily the dwelling, like in the plans themselves. It would just be helpful to see.
Okay, I see what you're saying, yes.
And then I calculated that, I think it actually works out in your favor, but the calculations for the proposed building coverage, well, both of them, you're high on both of them, so I think it would go down, at least it's in your favor. So the existing building coverage, if you added those three numbers, is 3,479, as opposed to 4,098, which you have shown,
Right.
which will decrease your percentage. And then the proposed building coverage is 4,704, where you have 7,704. So I think that works in your favor, everyone's favor.
Yes.
This is wrong, isn't it, where it says existing decks, the existing decks are 1,000.
That's one of my other comments, so I think he just has to resolve that,
I've got to clean those numbers.
yeah.
And I apologize for that. And no excuse for that. It should be correct. The maximum allowed is 10%. Just by nature of the numbers, you can see that we're certainly well.
Yep, because the deck is supposed to be 1,115 and you're showing 1,056. So again, as long as the calculations match the plans and then the whole thing matches the ERS, I think that will resolve most of these.
Can I just clarify that? So the second deck, there's one deck on here that says 1,056 square feet, is that correct? There's one of the decks on the house or one of the decks that's going to be?
So
On the proposed deck is going to be over 1,000 square feet?
Yeah, that seems pretty big.
yeah, it
It's
is.
the same number, so I'm just trying to figure out.
It is a large deck.
So when the project is over, there's going to be like 1,600 square feet of deck?
Yes.
It might be a little, this is Ken.
Oh,
I
okay.
think that might be a little high. I think that probably includes the existing deck. I don't, yeah.
I will make that consistent with the architect's drawings. And report that. Make sure that it's consistent.
Yeah, we're using the part of the existing deck, and so the addition is going to match up with that deck, so it's definitely not that level, that size.
I think other than, again, primarily just calculations, I think it's minor things, spelling issues, spelling errors, the locust maps on the front just need to have north arrows for both of them. The spelling error is on sheet 1, note 9. So it's application and installation.
Application?
Yep, and installation. And then I think, other than that, I do think it would be helpful for the infiltration trench sizing calculations on sheet 1. So you have that 66 square feet of area is proposed. I think it would be helpful just to know just the dimensions of it. So if it's a rectangle, just length by width.
6 by 11. To the right of that, it does have a dimension.
Oh, I didn't know if that was depth. So I just,
No, I believe that's, I can make that clear.
Okay.
That's a plastic.
and then my only question was, is an operation and maintenance plan, has it been submitted or, so for the infiltration trench and whatnot? I'm not sure how an operations and maintenance plan works.
So the operation and maintenance, you're referring to the infiltration trench or the?
I mean,
septic system?
mainly any of them that will require maintenance. Who's doing the maintenance, how often does it have to be done? I didn't know if it required an operations and maintenance, an O&M plan.
I have not done one of those in any of the stormwater, residential stormwater designs that we have done.
So is it handled privately?
It would be handled privately.
Okay. Yeah, that's the extent of my comments. It will look like a lot of comments, but most of them are related to either the calculations, which was the most important, or just minor errors that can be fixed easily.
So I have a question. Can you characterize the new OWTS system? Will it improve water quality? Will it improve the handling of the sewerage?
So that system, the current system is from 1978, 79-ish. So it's fairly outdated. Since that time, there's been a regulation change for septic systems within the watershed of the drinking water supply, where we have to have an increase in separation distance between the body of the septic system and the groundwater table. So this system has been designed in accordance with the DEM regulation for drinking water watershed requirements.
Could you summarize Conservation Commission's letter?
So we met with the Conservation Commission, we went through the project, They were pleased that we're replacing the septic system. We're also adding stormwater infiltration system to handle any of the runoff from the new impervious surfaces. We kept everything within the existing lawn. There's been no disturbance of habitat. There is, the pond is way up here to the left of your plan to the west. There is a wetland over here that's been flagged by Natural Resource Services, Rapid doing this company. We kept everything outside of that wetland, outside the 50-foot perimeter wetland, and actually the leaching field complies with the town's 125-foot setback to wetlands and leaching field. So we are quite a distance away from the wetlands. And again, it's in a grassed area of the lawn. We're not going to have to take down any habitat or anything along those lines. They were in favor of it. There had been some cutting of this area over in here. After the biologist came through and brought it to our attention that we've gone too far, that's been left to revegetate, and it's actually grown up quite a bit, and it will continue to be. There's a stone wall in here, which pretty much is the kind of the demarcation to keep the lawn separate from the wetlands surrounding the pond.
And the applicant agrees to observe that.
Yeah, I have some photos of how much of the Phragmites we have. I mean, we have a bumper crop, if you wanted to see. But, you know, this is basically, we're environmental people. And here's, maybe get that to Bill, but that's the current condition. And the only reason we went in there is it was trash from a former owner. So we had to get in and clean it up. So we just cleared so we could get the trash out. But this is the current condition. Like, you know. So if you actually look from the schoolhouse toward our property, you can't see much because of all the Phragmites, I mean, which is what it is. We understand that.
Right. Invasive species.
Yeah, they're doing well.
They're doing very well. Right. So, does anybody, Bill, do you have anything else to say about the Conservation Commission?
No, I mean, in that kind
And
of.
they do say in their letter that they endorse the application, they endorse the ERS. Does anybody around the table have any comments or questions to ask? Yes, Janice.
On the plan, you have an existing gravel driveway, and in the narrative, you have a paved.
Correct.
So it is gravel up and through here. Correct me
It's
if I'm wrong.
gravel.
Gravel all the way to wet.
The entirety is gravel in the front. There's no driveway behind. So it's just loose gravel.
All the way up to the main road?
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, so that's in the ERS narrative, the existing conditions section states paved drive.
Yeah, it's like a loose stone.
But it doesn't make all that much difference because DEM now, Bill, I believe, and Kelly, view a gravel driveway as an impervious structure.
Right, it will be impervious unless it's very stringent on, it has to be, I think it's like 3/4 inch clean washed stone.
Right.
And unless it's that,
Which
it's,
we often require.
right. So I think it's just reconciling the
I'll clean
narrative.
up the narrative and refund that.
Does anybody else on the board have any questions?
On the required amenities,
They said this is just.
is it just going to be two-bedroom and bathroom? What is included in this new addition?
Well, it's 2 bedrooms and it's a living.
Yeah, well, there's a mini kitchen. My wife has had rheumatoid arthritis for 30 years. And the reason we're doing this is she can't make the stairs. Her knees are shot. And she has AFib, and she doesn't want to go to the hospital and get new knees. So she'll die on the table. So that's why we're doing this. I mean, you know, we want to age out. This is a beautiful community, so.
Is there a way to indicate the flood zone?
It is.
It says that this line.
Yeah, so you've got it, so
What's the
A.
wetland zone?
Please use
So
the
the
mic.
wetlands is.
Just
Oh, okay.
speak up, guys.
Okay.
So, just showing the wetlands is here. There is a flood zone that's on the property. There's an AE flood zone to the north and to the west of the lawn area, and that's designated by this heavy line with the dot in between, and it follows here. We're not doing any construction in the flood zone that would require any special construction techniques.
Adam?
That was it.
So the process, but by the way, is there anybody in the audience that would like to make any comment? We normally don't do this, but since we have plenty of time tonight and there are so few people in the audience, no one. So the process that we have been using is we make our recommendation or we make a decision to approve the ERS. And then we pass that on to the building official along with the correspondence from our consulting engineer and from the Conservation Commission. So the building official has all of that information. And then the applicant can take it from there with the building official. So I think that despite the fact that Bill is going to be making a few adjustments, because your letter will now go to the building official, and Mr. Ramatowski's letter will, the chair of conservation, I think we can go ahead and approve the applicant's ERS tonight. And then they won't have to come back before the planning board a second time.
Can I make that motion?
Yes, Adam?
Make a motion to approve the ERS. Once Mary Kim?
Yes, but also to submit with it the letters from Dr. Ramatowski of Conservation and Kelly Ravenel of Sphere Engineering to provide guidance for the building official. So, and you're doing that right now, right?
I am.
Good, okay. Do we have a second? Yes.
Is that because the project will not adversely affect municipal water supplies? Yes.
Yes.
Yes, that's a good addition. That's a good addition. So we are now on record. So do we have a second? We have a second from Christopher? Do we have any further discussion on this environmental review statement? Everybody's comfortable with what we're doing here? Thank you, Bill.
Thank you. Was there a second?
Yeah, there was a second. Chris seconded it.
Yes, Chris
I'm trying to keep
seconded
up
it.
with you guys, really.
Seconded it. And did we vote? We didn't. We have to vote. So no further discussion. I will call a vote. And Rosemary, you can't come back until after we've voted. Christopher?
Yes.
Christine?
Yes.
Janice? Stu says yes. Rosemary is recused. Adam says yes. Peter?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so it's.
Do you want me to package that up with Tom's comments and with Tom's comments? Can I get that letter back?
You may certainly,
Distribute that?
you may certainly have that letter back. What did I do with it?
Thank you very much.
So,
For the record, I have returned.
yeah, for the minutes. Rosemary has returned.
Thanks, everybody. It's a pleasure having you.
Good luck with your building project and
Thank you
welcome to
so much.
Tiverton. We're trying our best to keep the town looking nice too.
Yeah, I mean, it's like having, we've been coming here for 20 years.
Yep. Okay.
We're very happy, and you're doing a good thing.
Good neighbors.
My pleasure, from my wife. Thank you.
Mr. Smith, are you also representing this as well?
Yes, I am.
Do you have the same conservation letter? Or not the same?
Kelly, you have an opportunity to
We didn't receive the documents.
Yes. So we're now on agenda item number 4, which is Caroline and Stephen Ballot, 146 Pelletier Lane, Tiverton, Rhode Island. Pelletier, as you probably know, goes along the east side of, the east and north side of Stafford Pond. My Stafford Pond geography is a little weak. They would like to demolish an existing structure or structures and build a new dwelling. And has everybody received the narrative on this and also the plan, again, done by Civil Engineering Concepts, which is Bill's Smith's organization? Has everybody seen this? Everybody is comfortable with that? We have not received anything from Kelly, because Kelly never received any documentation. And the Tom Ramatowski letter is all brand new to me. Did he do that at the, did Conservation, they did the two at the same time?
They did the same thing, yes.
Could you characterize that letter from Tom, because none of us have seen it?
So the location of the new dwelling will be as far from the shore of Stafford Pond and its border edge wetland area as possible. The small size of the property, 7,757 square feet. Can I just kind of give you a quick overview?
Please do.
Yes.
Please do.
So this is part of this is the POCO development. Pelletier Lane is in here. There's numerous structures, houses that are on the pond, adjacent to the pond, and those were all on leased land at one point. And through the process, they were able to condominiumize those. So each of the properties have their own little designated area. If you look at the locus plan, you can kind of see that basically lot lines were drawn around each structure. So
But officially, it's one lot, or two lots, but it was never subdivided into the smaller
no, so
entities.
these are limited common areas as
Right.
opposed to actual
Lots.
lines. And so we've got a limited common area of 7,757 square feet. There's an existing dwelling on it with a cesspool located very close to the shore of the pond. We've had the wetlands flagged again by Sky Rapid and Natural Resource Services. What we'd like to do is put in a replacement house. The house is in pretty rough shape. It needs a lot of attention. But in order to do that, to fit a septic system on the property, we actually have to move the location. We're proposing out of the sand filter, remove the cesspools that are there. The house is slightly smaller in size than the existing footprint, approximately the same distance away from the pond. We tried to push it back into this kind of northwest corner as much as we can and still allow room for the septic system. There was an existing well that was in a shed that's here. That well is going to be removed so that we can get the septic system in, and my clients have rights to use the well that's within Pelletier Lane, so we're going to take advantage of that. We've gone to DEM. We've got an approved septic system plan. We've gone to DEM, got an approved wetlands plan. So all of that work has been done, and that was included with the packet that I had provided to you. And then again, we went to conservation, and they endorsed the project. Again, the location of the new dwelling will be as far from the shore of Stafford Pond as possible. The amount of impervious surfaces currently on the lot cover approximately 15.8%. We're going to reduce that down to 13.4%, so it's going to be a slight reduction. we're going to have to go to the zoning board because we can't come up with the 10 is the magic number in the watershed, so we'll need a special use permit for that work, but we wanted to go through conservation planning, environmental review, DEM, before we went to the zoning. The new sand filter will conform to DEM regulations, and will replace an outdated band cesspool currently located on the lot. The rain garden will collect runoff from the roof of the new dwelling. It will allow the ground to absorb the percentage of runoff from the house, usually the most polluted slug of rainwater from the structure, therefore preventing the water from sheet flowing underground towards the static pond. And no natural features of the lot or surrounding areas will be destroyed or altered by the proposed project. All work will take place within the lawn portion of the property. So that's what conservation included in their letter. It is all lawn now. Actually, it's probably lawn right up to the pond edge. Some of that will end up having to be naturalized and provide some habitat.
How far is it from the pond? It's closer to the pond than the original, this is the way I'm reading them.
So from the pond itself, it's I'll give you an approximate. So from the pond itself, from the water body, we are approximately 45 feet proposed, and for the existing house, it's approximately 30 feet. So it is pushed back a little bit, as much as we could on that particular one.
I must be reading it incorrectly.
So I'm measuring from the pond, not the wetland.
Okay, this is the new house.
Right, so from here, the closest point is about 40 feet. From here, to the closest point is about 30 feet.
I'm sorry.
No. I did some research. Having been on the board a long time, I still think it's an illegal subdivision because these lots, no offense, these were created by Stapoko. They were not created through subdivision. And I was in the assessor's office yesterday, and they have delineated on the lot, a plat. And to me, these are just two parcels of land, never been through subdivision with the board. So I can't support it, even though, I know what you're trying to do, but I said this, and we had another petition here about 3 or 4 years ago, and the former solicitor was supposed to be doing some research. We never got anything back from him, so that's my position on the, my opinion.
I know when all this was prepared, again, it was done as a condominium.
It was, and they're assigned areas,
Right.
and they're supposedly on file in the town hall somewhere, but not in the land evidence. It's still, and they've been assigned lots by the assessors, but we've always been told what's ever in the land evidence is the legal documents.
And we compared Mylars for recording purposes.
And they're not, it wasn't a subdivision. So,
Well, I understand it wasn't a subdivision, but it was really to try and clean this up so these folks could actually get a loan and,
Understand.
things like that.
Understand.
I live on Stafford Pond, 2 on Palatine Lane, but down the road. This house is actually Brad's son, but the person across the street from me built a house, and I think that may have been who you're talking about. And when he heard that we had bought the land up the street, he had said, make sure you tell them that box 116 in the clerk's department has this drawing of Stapoko from 2009 that was accepted in 2010, documented and accepted and recorded there.
It's not recorded.
He said he went through a whole lot of trouble in order to get to this point at his meetings that went on for many, many months. He said this is what the end of it had brought forth, was that it is recorded here, box 116, clerk's department. Make sure that you go in with that information because they don't know that.
I went searching yesterday. It is in a box supposedly, but it's not been recorded through the subdivision.
So is that because it was in a subdivision?
It was not, it
Record
still
something?
stands as 2 lots. You know, they're assigned areas. They're not
Right.
lots of record because of the runoff and everything that we go through with the zoning. They're really like substandard lots when you get this. And it's very deceptive.
I know the zoning does reflect situations like this where, in cases where there aren't individual lots, but there are assigned areas, it specifically addresses how the setbacks are applied and that sort of thing.
Right, and who's keeping track of the lot coverage, the cumulative, you know, when you start coming in?
Well, so the way the zoning is written, each limited common area is essentially treated as its own lot. You have to stay within the 10% limitation because it's established on your particular area. That's the way that the zoning enforces it or is written.
Right.
So, Rosemary, I'm sympathetic with the issues that Rosemary is raising. It's not the first time we've talked about the Stapoko situation at the planning board. And that does need to be researched, and maybe, Bill, since you're going to have to go before zoning for relief on this particular application, maybe zoning will also look into that to some extent. But what we're here to do tonight is to simply approve or disapprove the environmental review statement. So we're really not here to talk about the exact legal credentials of the Stapoko area. We're here simply focusing on the environmental review statement. And Bill has mentioned that the lot coverage actually will decline so that there will be less impervious and more pervious, and that will boost the water quality. And even more importantly, a cesspool will be removed, and a modern DEM compliant OWTS will be put in the place of a failing cesspool system. And I think on balance, and you're moving the house farther away from the shores of Stafford Pond, I think on balance, what you're doing is a benefit to Stafford Pond and to the environment. And I would urge my colleagues to go ahead and support this, despite the fact that we don't have the benefit of Steers' insight into this in their recommendation. But we do have Conservation's letter, and tell us, characterize again, Bill, because you kind of got off the topic there, characterize what Conservation has to say about this. Do they have misgivings?
They didn't indicate any misgivings. I think they had 4 or 5 bullets that were included in their letter, and they were all positive. Location of the new dwelling will be as far from the shore of Stafford Pond as possible. The amount of impervious surface will be reduced. New bottomless sand filter over WTS will conform to the current DEM regulations, and we'll replace an outdated favorite cesspool. The rain garden will collect runoff from the new dwelling and allow the ground to absorb the first inch of runoff from the house, thereby preventing that water from sheet flowing into the ground towards or into Stafford Pond. And no natural features of the lot or surrounding area will be destroyed or altered by the proposed project. And all work will take place within the law area. So their letters were it was very favorable.
Right, I don't think that we can hold the applicant accountable for Mr. Stopoko's creative efforts to subdivide his land. And I don't think that's our role in any case. I think that's something that zoning may want to take up when you go before zoning. But I think that we should focus entirely on the environmental. And I completely agree with conservation and Dr. Ramatowski that this on balance, this benefits the water quality in Stafford Pond. This is good for the environment of Tiverton. So despite the fact that we don't have Kelly's input and Steer's input, I would, Kelly, do you have any comments? Because you haven't even seen it, so this, you don't, you. I would urge my colleagues to go ahead and approve this ERS, making the point that this is, on balance, a net improvement to water quality and to the environment, and further requiring that Tom Ramatowski or the Conservation Commission's letter be passed on to the building official. Do
I think I'd like to see the applicant come back again and feel what Kelly can put together a statement.
How do the rest of you feel? You all agree? Okay. Kelly, can you get this material? Maybe I should just give you mine. I'll give you mine.
Yeah, that works.
It is pretty straightforward. I mean, we could vote to approve it based on, maybe her approval. Conditional.
You should.
Doing a great job.
You should all be aware, everybody on this board should be aware that, that the town administrator has been talking to town council, and with the idea that only the town planner, AO, should be speaking to the consulting engineer. I shouldn't be speaking to the consulting engineer. None of us should be speaking to the consulting engineer and asking her to do things only according to our town administrator, and we have two town council members here, so they can agree with me or disagree with me, or just, wait, I actually have two. No, we have two. So I'm a little uncomfortable in putting a mandate on Kelly and Steer, because I don't think that we're supposed to be playing that role. So I'm going to ask Todd if he'd like to run that.
I think because Steer would typically provide you with a review, and it's the board's recommendation that she provide a review. And you're saying,
Okay, because I don't want to get yelled at. And I've been yelled at. Okay, excellent. If that's the way you all want to go, and I was going to be the nice guy here and approve it. But I completely understand your perspective, and I feel more comfortable getting Kelly's input. I don't think we're going to cause any problems for the applicant, so we'll try to get you on the July 12th agenda, because I think this can go very quickly.
Could we, I think Adam had a good idea that we'd be happy to say.
were you trying to say
Yeah,
conditional
I
on
would like,
Kelly's?
conditional on review, so we don't have to come back.
So you don't have to come back. That's an excellent idea, Adam.
And if it's unfavorable, we will.
Then you have to come back.
But if I think I got most of the spelling errors.
And that's
Calculations.
assisted at the calculations.
No showstoppers.
I really like that, because then hopefully you won't have to come back and there won't be any further delays. And we will benefit from Steer's input. So Adam, are you making that as a motion? That we approve because we believe, we conditionally believe that this, the ERS, subject to Steer's review, favorable review. And then if that all happens, that our recommendation be passed on to the building official with conservation's input, with Steer engineers' input. So that's good with you, Adam. That was a very good suggestion, Adam.
Because it will not adversely affect the municipal public water supply.
This will not adversely affect the municipal water supply.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion, do we have a second for
I'll
this?
second that, very reasonable. That was well spoken, it was well put out there.
I completely agree. So thank you, Chris. So we have a motion, a second. Do we have further discussion on this?
I can turn it around quickly too. I imagine by the beginning of next week, you could have it back.
Is it hard for me to email the package tomorrow? Or do you want to go for the?
We're going to delegate that to you, Mr. Smith.
Send it my way.
You can have mine, Kelly, before you leave. So, hearing no further discussion, all of those in favor, Christopher votes yes, Christine votes yes, Janice votes yes, Rosemary votes no, Stu votes yes, Adam votes yes, Peter votes yes. So we don't have five votes, but I don't think we need this for any ERS. We have five. We have five. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, good, thank you.
Thank you.
Good solution.
Appreciate your time.
Good solution, Adam. Thank you.
I'll get it over. Thank you. Well, I usually mark it up on the blue beam anyway, so.
I know it's Mickey Mouse. I'd just like to say before we close out on this agenda item, Bill, Mr. Smith, I just forgot to mention this, but I did send a message to our DPW director, who very often likes to comment on ERSs, and that's Rick Rogers. And I didn't talk to him directly because he was out of the office when I called, but I left a message saying that we don't have seasons tonight, so you don't need to come, but if you're interested in either one of the ERSs, please come, and I'll call upon you to say anything you'd like. The fact that he didn't come.
Probably think seasons is still on, when you realize seasons got canceled.
No, I told him that this morning in my phone message. So had he had any comments on either one of these, I'm sure he would have been here because you know Rick.
We're going to follow up with him tomorrow if he has any comments, just to make you aware.
That would be wonderful. That would be wonderful. Yeah. Because I always like to keep Rick Rogers involved
He
because he's
also
the guy
gets
that
another
makes.
shot at it with their building permit.
Exactly. It's always good to keep him in the loop. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now I think we can move on to our next agenda item, which is planning board. And I would like to call on our legal counsel for his thoughts on how we might be able to improve the minute process. Because as everybody knows, we're way in arrears on minutes, and the Secretary of State doesn't like that. They like complete compliance with Open Meeting Act. And Todd has come up with an idea that I think is terrific. And I want to say that I really appreciate the town council approving and kind of insisting on the fact that we are now going to be televised. So anything anybody says around this table is in the public domain, and there can't be any question about it. So that actually makes your suggestion even more attractive, Todd. But go ahead, Todd.
So Stu and I had a nice conversation on Friday afternoon about the meeting minutes because of the length of time that it takes to go through them, the length of the meeting minutes themselves, and the delinquency in getting them up to the Secretary of State's office. And what I suggested to Stu was that we do more of a bare bones meeting minutes that satisfies the open meeting requirements, get those on record with the Secretary of State as a first tier type meeting minute. And then we can do a second tier type meeting minutes if you want, that's more encompassing as you have had in the past. Now, that second tier may not be necessary because we have a recording, but I know some people also like to have the paper record as well. So we can discuss that. Is that fair?
Absolutely.
I can interrupt quickly. Do you need Sierra for anything?
No, you're
Thank
free.
you. Thank you so much.
Sorry, Kelly, I should have mentioned
Oh,
that.
not a problem. I didn't want to interrupt. Thank you.
So from the last meeting that we had on May 17th, I did do a very bare bones, what I'm calling a bare bones meeting minutes. I have blanks in it still as to who made the motions and seconds because I was not keeping good notes that evening. I was going to rely on the tape recorder. I can pass it on. I don't have copies from it, but I can pass what I have around and take a look at what I'm suggesting as bare bones. I know some folks are probably going to want more, but this would satisfy the Secretary of State. Ms. Eva, I know you have concerns also about, in the future, should there be litigation about any of these matters, but if they're being recorded, we can give those recordings to a stenographer to transcribe, which is going to be way more better, or way better than our notes anyways, which may or may not be completely accurate. Thoughts, suggestions, comments?
I like the idea of a bare bones, simplified, cut down minutes for those sets of minutes, some of which go back over a year, that we are in arrears for. Going forward, so I completely agree with Todd for all of the things that are overdue now, and there are probably, I don't know, 8 or 10 sets of minutes.
Excuse me, to the extent they have not already been prepared by yet.
Yes, or prepared but not ever approved by the planning
Yes.
board, or sent to the Secretary of State's office as a draft without coming through the planning board, that kind of thing. I think the bare bones approach is wonderful because we can get caught up pretty quickly. But after we get caught up, then I think we might want to think about expanding a little bit so that we get into who said what. Because the bare bones doesn't tell you that. It just basically is just all business, no commentary. And I'd like to see a little bit of commentary where it's important. But that's something that we can think about later after we get caught up with bare bones. And I'm talking about page and a half, 2-page minutes, right, Todd? Basically, maybe a longer meeting would be like 3, 4 at the max, 3.5.
There's not
4
much
at the max.
substance.
But just the facts and not a lot of substance, just to get caught up and satisfy OMA, Open Meeting Act. I think that's a great idea. I appreciate Todd coming up with it.
Can I add to that though also?
Yes.
As we know, Jennifer's leaving next week. We can't rely on Ed completely, he's going to be overwhelmed, so we have to keep that in mind as well. So we may have, if you agree, some period of time going forward even, where we have to
Yes,
be bare bones.
exactly, that's a good point. Exactly, we're in a very difficult transition now, so And this will make our transition a little easier on any staff that gets drawn in, any paid staff.
I was just going to offer, I think that's a fantastic suggestion. I'm assuming that what you're referring to as bare bones is just basically voted on actionable items,
So
documentation of.
I'll tell you, for meeting last month, right, has the heading that we have on our agenda already. Application was presented by Court Chappelle. Testimony for the application was given by X, Y, and Z. The applicant's witnesses responded to questions from the board. No one from the public came forward. If public members came forward, I would identify them. A motion was made by and seconded by blank, in this case to extend the time clock to June 7. Motion was unanimously approved. Motion was made and seconded to establish an ad hoc committee naming X, Y, and Z as members. Motion was unanimously approved. Motion was made and seconded to approve the application for development plan review, site and design subject to approval, project by the planning board ad hoc technical review committee. Motion was unanimously approved. Next item.
And then we have the permanent record of the full recording for that clause. So I think it makes much more sense. I was also just going to suggest, if we have a backlog, there are transcription services you have to pay for, but they would be done verbatim. There's an automated version and there's a personal version where someone's actually listening to the transcript and then doing that. So if we do not, or our town does not have the capacity, I might suggest that we look into that from the planning office and get that done, because it's still going to take time with our AO leaving and Ed under probably overburdened. It's still going to take time to get those done. So I think this is a great interim solution and a forward-looking solution. Perhaps also doing a third-party transcription service would just get us caught up.
Yeah, you mentioned that before. I think that's an option we should keep in mind if we have the budget for it.
And I don't know if that requires additional approvals. It may well indeed, but it should be noted somehow to be explored to see if it's possible.
Yep. Good. So is there general agreement that that's a good approach?
Love it.
Christine, you like
I'm
that?
also happy to write the minutes, if that's,
You sound like you want to be secretary to me.
I'm happy to, I do it every day for my job, so. It's just throwing it out there as an option.
Thank you. And I have also offered Ed, if he wants to call me in to help him with
I think our time
minutes.
is better spent doing other things rather than writing all these minutes and doing what Tom proposed. Just keep it short.
Yeah, yeah,
Sure.
yeah. Janice, are you comfortable with this idea of bare bones minutes until we catch up and get through our transition?
Absolutely.
Rosemary?
I'm thinking about
Rosemary's saying, sure.
I've been burned too many times.
I'm happy. I think this is a good, it's not the ideal solution in a perfect world, but given where we are now, I think this is a way that we can really catch up, and without overburdening our staff. So I'm all for it. I think, Adam, you haven't said anything.
No, I was reading the minutes. Okay. Adjustments.
Okay. So I think there's more or less of a consensus to go that way, so absolutely. And now, one of us is going to have to sit down with Ed at a certain point and say, okay, here's how we're doing it from now on, so that he gets comfortable with that process. But I think he'll get comfortable with it pretty quickly.
I think he'll
Because you've got a written model now.
Correct.
Now that's lesson number one on how to do it, so that's good. I was given in my hard copy packet, I was given 3 sets of minutes for this meeting. And I think Rosemary got the same thing, because we picked them up at the same time, and then we picked up Janice's for delivery. And all of you people who get electronic, did you get 3 sets of minutes?
Yes. Electronically?
Yes.
I picked up my hard copy, so I just have 2 sets of minutes.
Okay, so,
March 1st.
December 7th, June 8th.
okay, I'd just like to say, I'd like to, I think we might be able to approve 1 or 2 of these sets, or maybe even 3 sets tonight, and just get that out of the way. The longest set of minutes were minutes that, and this was the June 8, 2021 minutes that have draft on them. Did you get those? You all got those. Can I start there, Todd? I'd like to start there because these minutes are actually in excellent shape. 16 pages, and it was done by Capri, the ad's predecessor. But I went through it carefully, and I didn't see, I know that this is way over what we view, but it's accurate. It's almost like a transcription. It's very accurate, and I just had a handful of small typographicals and name changes and things like that. Would it be possible, Todd, so that we can avoid going through paragraph by paragraph with all of the little gremlins and typos, which takes a lot of time, if we could simply approve these and direct the chair to sit down with staff with the changes that he has made. I don't know if anybody else has made any changes, has any corrections to the June 8, 2021. That's a whole year ago, 1 year ago, just about, to these minutes, so that we can,
Does anybody else have changes?
Does anybody else have changes? Janice, good.
Janice, are they typographical changes? Non-substantive changes?
Right, on page 11.
Okay, well, hold on. Rosemary, did you have some as well?
No, I
Okay.
didn't.
So, I think the board can approve these minutes, subject to the chair meeting, with,
Do you want?
and the chair's going to get
I'd
yours.
like your red, I'd like
They're in red.
your red copy and my red copy, and then I can sit down with Ed, and if you'll trust the chair, sit down with Ed, he can clean them up, they've already been approved, and then they can go to the Secretary of State's office, but they are, I reread them this morning, and they are really, really good.
So the motion I'm hearing from the chair is to approve the June 8, 2021 meeting minutes, subject to his meeting with the land use clerk to correct grammatical
Errors that Stu found and Janice found.
non-substantive corrections.
Non-substantive, no.
Yes?
Yeah.
Yep. So we have a motion. Who made that motion?
Somebody over there.
Peter made the motion.
Adam seconded.
Adam seconded it. Is there any further discussion?
We weren't at that meeting.
We're not voting on this, we're just voting on.
No, we're voting on those minutes, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we weren't there.
I thought this was about policy.
No, this is about these June.
This is actual minutes.
No, we're not going to vote. We can make the motion.
Oh, we can't.
We're motion on.
No, you had to, if you weren't there.
Thought he was there. On
Rosemary
June
can
8th.
sue.
There's a bunch of us not there.
Peter was there.
Peter, you were there.
Well, it's
You
just,
were both there.
No, Peter was there. Peter,
Adam,
Adam, and Amanda Souza Vieira were not there. So, okay,
Janice and.
so Janice and Christine have made the motion, and this motion simply directs me to get Janice's corrections, add them to my own corrections, again, non-substantive typos, and sit down with Ed.
But otherwise, the minutes are approved.
Otherwise, the minutes are approved, you won't see them again, and they'll go straight to the Secretary of State's. Well,
Get a copy.
right, and they go to the Secretary of State's office without any further action by us. So that's the motion. You guys can't vote because you weren't here. Any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all of those in favor. And I would like to call individually, Chris.
And I wasn't here either.
Oh,
so-
of course you weren't here. Christine? Janice
Yes.
is a yes. Stu is a yes.
And I'm a yes.
And you're a yes. Thank you. So, okay. Okay, so the other two sets, there were a huge number of corrections on the December 7, 2021 minutes. So if you had the December 7, 2021, there are too many corrections to do what we just did, I think. I think that needs to be completely rewritten. And I think that there were also substantive problems as well as typographical. But the March 1, 2022 minutes are in good enough shape so that I could probably walk you guys through. I don't know if anybody else. Janice, did you make any changes to March 1, 2022?
You know that, did we go over these already?
I think we went over those already, but I can't remember what happened.
The first paragraph down,
What's it start with, Jack?
Page one?
Vice Chairman Hahn,
Okay.
Yeah?
read that. The whole
Doesn't
paragraph.
make sense.
Yeah, and that's one that I kind of rewrote. And it said, Vice Chairman Hardy introduced Mark Van Noppen and B.J. Dupree, representing the Armory Revival Group, to go over the details of the project. The project was approved for $290. Now, that's where I crossed a lot of things out, and because it was garbled.
Doesn't make sense.
It didn't make sense, so I rewrote this. This is the only thing I actually had to rewrite. The others were all typos. I don't know, would you like to hear my corrections, or would you like to just not deal with this tonight?
I would like to hear you read that paragraph, how you corrected it, because it really doesn't make any sense the way it is.
Can I
I would like
read
to
it?
hear it, yeah, please.
Can I read it the way
Yes.
I did? Okay, so, well, the first thing is in the very first paragraph on page 1. It was not virtually on the Zoom platform. I crossed that out. It was at Town Hall. It was a face-to-face meeting. So then we go down to the paragraph that Janice was just asking about that begins with Vice Chairman Hardy. And here's my recollection of what actually happened. Vice Chairman Hardy introduced Mark Van Noppen and B.J. Dupree, representing the Armory Revival Group, to go over the details of the project, period. The project was approved for 290 units and is now 275 units. Parking was granted for 479 spaces, adding 8 more spaces, resulting in 487 total spaces provided, period. The derelict building that collapsed will be replaced by a carport with roof supporting solar panels, period. Mr. Hardy asked if the footprint of the old building was larger or smaller than the parking area. Mr. Van Noppen confirmed that the carport will be smaller, 331 square feet less. So that's how I rewrote that paragraph. And then if you go down 2 more paragraphs.
Let's read that last one. Mr. Van Noppen confirmed. Can you read that?
Yes, Mr. Van Noppen confirmed that the carport will be smaller,
We just say 331 square feet smaller. That's it.
331 square feet less. Okay? So then, in the paragraph, 2 paragraphs down from there that begins received a grant, I just crossed that sentence out because it was garbled and it was irrelevant. So that paragraph will simply now read, the building will produce more energy than it consumes. And then on the next page, I changed AP to plat, because we use plat and lot in the town of Tiverton. And I changed in the paragraph, it goes with 1, 2, 3, 4. In the 5th paragraph down, it starts with Mr. Hardy. Mr. Hardy made a motion to continue the item to, not during, to the April 5, 2022 Planning Board meeting. And then in the paragraph that is the next to the last paragraph on page 2 of 3, Mr. Hardy said the item will be continued to the April 5, 2022 meeting rather than moved to, because we use the term continued. And then in the very final thing on page 2, it said, Mr. Hardy expressed that it's important for board members to know what is coming into the planning office in order to effectively operate as a board. Okay. And that was the only thing. Everything else, those were the only corrections I made. Janice, did you have any additional corrections?
No.
I don't know if we've approved this or not, because
There is, it's B.J. Dupre, not Dupree. It's spelled incorrectly.
oh, excellent, I know you know him.
Thank you.
Tell me how to spell it correctly.
D-U-P-R-E.
Dupre.
Dupre, not Dupree.
Excellent, thank you. Thank you, Peter.
And in that, on the first page, 3rd from the bottom, my name is misspelled as well.
Yes, oh, I'm sorry, I
My name's
didn't.
misspelled too.
I have a suggestion, and I didn't, first of all, I didn't review these thoroughly. What I've noticed, I've been trying to meet with Ed for several times. He's had some personal problems. And he does not carry over the information from the agenda onto the minutes. It's supposed to be verbatim, so I think it needs to be checked. Because I,
It's a good point, especially with the spellings.
yes, and it's changed some of the things, so it really should be back-checked. I have the ones that you asked me to sit down with him and do that I wasn't at. He substituted a lot of things that weren't there. So that really has to be checked. I read all of those.
Did you have any comments about this
No,
March 1?
I didn't, I have not checked this.
I will do as you suggest. I'm going to suggest, just to make things easier for everybody and to whittle down on our backlog of overdue minutes, that you guys authorize me.
I have a motion for Stu to make the changes that we just spoke of, so that we may approve these minutes pending your corrections.
Yeah, and Adam's name was misspelled too, I didn't pick that up, Raposo.
All right. Those corrections and other non-substantive corrections as necessary?
Right.
Correct.
Right, because nothing here that I've changed is really substantive, it's just garbled stuff that I tried to ungarble. So I appreciate that. So we have a motion, do we have a second
I'll
from
second
Adam? We have a second from Rosemary. You weren't there, right? So any further discussion? So now you've given me 2 sets of minutes to go in and sit down with Ed, and we can clean those up in no time at all. He'll sit at his computer and type, and I'll just dictate to him, we'll clean that up, and then we'll have 2 sets of minutes that we can deal with. Thank you.
Just need to vote.
We need to vote now, so no further discussion. Okay, I'm just going to go around. Christopher,
And I can vote on this one, right? So yes.
Were you there?
were you there?
I was not there, so.
Oh, you can't do, I'm sorry. You weren't
I
there.
was not sure what we were voting on. If we were
Yeah.
voting on
It's
the
March,
assignment.
it's
that's what I
March
voted.
1. You didn't come on board until later.
Nope.
Christine, you were there. Janice, you were there.
Yes.
Rosemary votes yes. Stu votes yes. Adam was not there. Peter was there, so Peter.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you so much. That gets, at least we've got 2 sets now done. Okay, so the last item on the agenda is really an update from the planning board's liaison to the Harbor Commission. Christopher, do you have anything you'd like to?
Nothing new, but it sounds like the dinghy docks got set up and ready to go, so.
The dinghy docks are there. I was just there this morning, and they are all set up. You can go out on them. I think that's a wonderful amenity for Tiverton Basin. So,
There's collaboration between the town and the Department of Public Works. And I mean, it was very-
oh yeah, no, it's terrific, and I think it fits in with all of the improvements that were made at Grinnell's Beach. So now, and on the Stone Bridge abutment. So now that whole thing is becoming more park-like and more pedestrian
It
friendly.
was
So
quite busy yesterday.
it was wicked busy yesterday, and it was busy today too. People are at the beach. A lot of Massachusetts license plates, but I just enjoy seeing kids having fun on the beach. So I think, Mr. Solicitor, can you think of anything else we need to discuss? Or that we can discuss? I don't think we.
It's not on the agenda.
I don't think we can discuss anything because we run through our agenda and we've made great progress tonight. Thank you so much. Motion to adjourn?
I do have an administrative question. Sorry.
Yes, yeah.
Just in terms of, and this relates to the Colvia project, which is definitely pushed forward. The question that was raised at the last meeting that you clarified in terms of the actual vote to adopt the comprehensive plan. Will there be just a clarification or something circulated to show that the town officially adopted that? It just remained an open question, and I feel like that should, for the record, and also be promoted as part of the next time they come in, if the public knowledge of that ordinance actually being adopted into.
I believe there will be a memorandum coming from the town planner's office to the planning board, which will be a public document, explaining the adoption of the pedestrian-friendly district.
Does everybody, again, this is a process question, does everybody have a copy of a wonderful little publication that was put together when the form-based code, as we call it, with the 3 pedestrian-oriented commercial districts was adopted? There was a nice booklet put together. It not only tells you everything you need to know about those 3 districts, but it also gives design standards.
Yes.
There are design standards that we like this, we try to avoid this. And those standards are important to go out to applicants so they know what we're looking for. That's exactly what I'm referring to. If not everybody has this, I think everybody should have it.
It's also available electronically.
You can get it electronically, it's on the website, but, you know, for us old-fashioned people, it's really nice. It's a beautifully put-together document, I think.
And I'm
I
glad
use
you
it all the
mentioned that,
time.
and this is another process question. But since that came up, and this has been something I've been requesting, and I just don't know what the proper process is, but there are gaps that I could see from what our wishes around the comprehensive plan are, and the teeth in our zoning ordinance to actually enact them. And this gets back to, when will zoning and planning have an opportunity to review these and to tighten them, because we keep facing issues that could be made much more clear from the start, if that were better aligned and reviewed. And so I don't know, who leads the charge, if we can put a request that an official review of zoning ordinance and how it comports with the desire of the comprehensive plan, if that's something the council needs to do. But that needs to be done, and it's gonna take a long time. I mean, just even what just happened recently at Four Corners with the events, is another indication of how badly aligned that is. And so I just hope that somewhere that is being considered, and I would be more than happy to volunteer to help toward that effort. I just don't know how we begin that effort.
And Christine has too.
So,
I just don't know how to begin it, but now that we're going through a transition, we may have more luck this time.
Yeah, is it administrative issues?
Should we end the original meeting talking about this?
it's a process thing, and we're getting,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
gonna get tested soon.
Yeah.
We can put it on the agenda for the next meeting if you want to. How to do that, I think what you're going to need to do is probably create, you need the officers, the staff, to work with maybe a subcommittee. But we also have to get authority from town council, granted to the planning board, because right now the enabling legislation is not authorized.
Right.
That's going to require more meetings as well.
Yeah.
Process questions. Even though it's-
We're not going to go under this little umbrella of process questions, guys, all right? I'm going to let it go
I
some.
volunteered for a minute, but I haven't heard. We had a TRC be done, haven't seen any minutes to it. That was done. We also volunteered some
I
of
did
us.
not see this.
All right, so talk to
Do you
me
know?
after this. I don't know,
Okay,
but I'll have to follow up,
okay,
okay?
appreciate it.
Why don't you have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
And Adam already made that, and it doesn't have to be seconded.
It's a privilege motion, so
It's a privileged motion, so